Smith was born in Oxfordshire, Churchill, northern Oxford, and he spent his time being trained as a civil engineer and a land surveyor by a rather remarkable man called Edward Webb. And Edward Webb was involved with the enclosure movement. They were trying to get agriculture better organised and controlled. And at some stage he was asked to go down to a village in North Somerset called Stowey to do an estate for the Jones family. And Smith ended up walking all the way from Oxfordshire to Somerset, taking on this job, where a very early scientist called John Strachey had also been interested in the stratigraphy in the coal mines there. And Smith was so successful in doing that that he was then asked to be the engineer and the surveyor to a new canal, the Somerset Coal Canal, which was trying to take landlocked coal out of Somerset into Bath, which of course was a great popular place, Bristol, and on the new Kennington Avon Canal all the way to London and everywhere else. So Smith got heavily involved in canal building. And this of course gave him the great opportunity. My father was a surgeon, and I, with my students, used the analogy that Smith was involved in the first major surgery of the English countryside. Before farming, you plough a little bit, you dig a little bit, you made roads with little bits, but the first systematic surgery in Britain involved canal building. Mm-hmm. And of course, by a series of miracles, he was crossing rocks between Bath and Bristol and out to the countryside, beautiful countryside to the south of Bath, which went across rocks which are completely unfossiliferous, and then suddenly, strangely and wonderfully, very fossiliferous, full of fossils. And you couldn't, and you still can't, be but struck with the richness of the fossils that you could find in that part of the world. And this meant that Smith had already gained a pretty good idea about the stratigraphy, the order of the rocks. And again, the analogy I use with my students is that he put the rocks in an alphabetical order. If you realise that A, B, C, D, E is important, you can index books, you know where D is in relation to C and all this stuff. Smith did exactly the same thing for geology in Britain. He ordered the rocks, he put them in some sort of alphabetical order. So you could say that the coal measures are at Z, and you won't find anything until you get to Z, because it's at the bottom of something. Mm-hmm. And he was looking at rocks far above it. And of course, the point we were making outside, people were looking for coal way, way above any possible level around here that would have had any coal, because coal is a stratified mineral which is at a particular place. Mm. So the first thing Smith did was he ordered, alphabetized the rocks. Mm-hmm. But the other thing he did, and I think this is probably just equally important, he needed a method to identify which rock was which. And you can look at the rock and say, that's yellow sandstone, this is black clay, this is green limestone, whatever. But many of these statements are repetitious. You get lots of black clays, lots of yellow limestones. And Smith's achievement, because of the surgery of the canals, was he realised, the penny dropped with him, that the fossils could identify which rock you were in because they differed. Mm-hmm. The rocks looked the same, but the fossils were completely different. Yeah. And I think that was the answer.
So where does George Baker fit in? They were friends of his.
Well, I think George Baker is a common name, but I remember there is a George Baker in the list of subscribers to William Smith's fine and very beautiful geological map. Whether it's this man, I can't actually remember, but he was certainly a collector of fossils, and he was certainly very knowledgeable about Northamptonshire geology, because Smith had explained it to him on previous visits. They'd known each other for quite a few years beforehand, and certainly when Baker died, he had a very large collection of fossils which was sold in an auction, because I think Baker got into financial difficulties as well, because he didn't finish his history of Northamptonshire, and there was a sale when he died, or before he died, because he had just overextended himself. So, a monument again to two people who took on too much, or weren't honoured enough by British society. And I think that's a problem we have in our society. We don't realise who the main game changers are, and we honour sometimes the wrong people.